The United States just managed to shake the foundations of 3 different pillars of the global economy. In less than 24 hours, not over a week, not over a month. One day dot in that single window of time, Washington escalated tensions. With the BRICS alliance, rattled the trillion-dollar semiconductor supply chain, and saw one of its most loyal allies quietly start to drift away. The headlines tell one story. The deeper reality is far more dangerous. Because what happened in those 24 hours wasn't just a diplomatic blunder. It was the beginning of a structural shift that could erode American influence for decades. And it all started with Donald Trump's decision to target the one BRICS member the U.S. could least afford to lose. India, Part 1. The BRICS. Gamble India has long been considered Washington's ace in Asia, a counterbalance to Beijing, a democracy with rising economic power, and until recently, the only BRICS nation still publicly defending the U.S. dollar's dominance. That fragile alliance is now on the brink. Trump announced new punitive tariffs to 50% on Indian exports, hitting everything from pharmaceuticals to electronics to polished diamonds. The official justification? India's refusal to stop buying Russian oil and its deepening role in BRICS. But this isn't just about oil. India imports Russian crude at deep discounts, allowing it to control inflation and keep energy prices low. For New Delhi, that's an economic necessity. For Washington, Trump sees it as disloyalty. The problem? By punishing India, the U.S. may be forcing it into Beijing's arms, accelerating exactly what Washington has been trying to prevent. The pharmaceutical time bomb, if there's one export the U.S. cannot afford to disrupt. Its Indian Pharmaceuticals. India is known as the pharmacy of the world. It produces over 20% of all generic medicines Americans rely on, from antibiotics and insulin to cancer treatments and blood pressure medication. These aren't luxury imports. They are the drugs keeping millions of Americans alive. Now imagine the reality if tariffs triple overnight. Hospitals already struggling with staffing shortages would face medication shortages. Pharmacies in small towns could run out of common drugs entirely. Insulin prices, already unaffordable for many, could double. Patients could be forced to ration chemotherapy or skip critical treatments. The U.S. doesn't have the capacity to replace India's pharmaceutical output. Building new production facilities would take years and cost billions. By the time any domestic solution came online, the damage would be done. This isn't just an economic risk. It's a national health security crisis waiting to erupt. Playing politics with medicine is like playing with fire inside a gas station. One spark and everything blows. Diamonds and detours, the tariffs don't stop at medicine. Trump is also targeting Indian diamonds, a $24 billion U.S. import market. But if America walks away, China and Hong Kong are ready to take those gems without hesitation. Every diamond trade rerouted to Asia strengthens BRICS, weakens the U.S., and signals to the world that America is no longer the market of first resort. In Indian exports of textiles, electronics, and machinery, all of which would become more expensive under a 50% tariff, and you have a direct hit on both American consumers and U.S. companies that depend on Indian supply chains. The result? Higher prices at home, fewer allies abroad, and a BRICS alliance that emerges stronger, not weaker. Part 2. The semiconductor standoff. While the India crisis was unfolding, Trump opened another front, this time targeting the microchips that power modern life. His demand is simple on paper: force major chip makers like TSMC and Samsung to move their factories to U.S. soil, and slap a 100% tariff on imported chips unless they're made in America. In practice, it's chaos. TSMC's Arizona plant is already years behind schedule, plagued by cost overruns and a shortage of skilled labor. Samsung's Texas project is running into similar delays. The highly integrated supply chains these companies depend on don't exist in the U.S., and building them from scratch is a logistical nightmare. Meanwhile, China is seizing the moment, instead of being slowed by U.S. export bans. Beijing is accelerating domestic chip production. SMIC, China's top chip maker, has already achieved 5-nanometer production, something many experts thought would take them another decade without Western technology. The more Washington tries to choke China's access to foreign chips, faster Beijing moves to build its own. If China catches up, or worse, overtakes the U.S. in advanced semiconductors, the consequences won't just be economic. They'll be military, technological, and permanent. Part 3. The energy realignment. At the same time the U.S. was pressuring India and targeting chips, another shift was playing out quietly across Eurasia, one that could rewrite the global energy map. Russia and China are finalizing the Power of Siberia 2 pipeline, set to double the flow of Russian natural gas into China. The first pipeline is already delivering billions of cubic meters annually, and all of it bypasses Western markets entirely. This is energy warfare. And right now, Beijing is winning. China is locking in decades of cheap Russian oil and gas, secured at discounted rates thanks to Western sanctions. Every barrel fuels Chinese factories, power grids, and military production, while the U.S. watches its influence over global energy pricing erode. If this corridor becomes permanent, Washington's leverage over global markets could shrink dramatically. Not for years, but for generations. Part 4. The BRICS expansion threat. Trump's tariff war isn't stopping with India or China. Brazil is now in his sights. Brazil is one of America's top suppliers of coffee, soybeans, beef, and poultry. Tariffs that would raise U.S. food prices, hit American farmers, and deepen Brazil's alignment with China, which is already its largest trading partner. In short, every BRICS country Trump targets moves further away from Washington and closer to a shared vision, a global economy that functions without U.S. dominance. Part 5. The ally drifting away. Perhaps most alarming development in those 24 hours didn't involve a rival at all, but an ally. Japan, America's most trusted partner in Asia for decades, has begun charting its own independent course. Tokyo has signed a major trade deal with India, a BRICS member the U.S. is actively trying to isolate. It's expanding tech and energy cooperation with Brazil. Japanese companies are doubling down on Chinese partnerships, especially in electric vehicles and green technology. Even the Bank of Japan is quietly discussing reducing exposure to U.S. treasuries, a move that echoes growing global concern about America's rising debt and the safety of the dollar. For Washington, this is the nightmare scenario, an ally not defecting outright, but slowly building the capacity to say no. The bigger picture. In 24 hours, the U.S. managed to push India, its most valuable Asian partner, closer to China and Russia, undermine its own pharmaceutical security, strengthen China's position in the semiconductor race, watch Russia and China deepen an energy alliance that cuts the West out entirely, signal to long-standing allies like Japan that Washington's economic demands may not align with their own interests. Trump's strategy is framed as protectionism, defending American jobs, rebuilding industry, punishing those who cheat. But in reality, the tariffs and ultimatums are raising costs at home, fracturing alliances abroad, and giving America's competitors exactly what they want: a reason to move faster toward a world where the U.S. economy is no longer the center of gravity. The cracks are visible now, in trade routes, energy flows, currency reserves, and diplomatic alignments. Once those cracks widen into fractures, they don't close easily. The world is building new systems, new alliances, new rules. And in that new order, America may find that the more it tries to force others into line, the faster they learn to live Without it, the question is no longer whether Trump's strategy is bold. The real question is, when the dust settles, will there still be a world that needs the United States?